During COVID alone, in the first phase, I came across around 20 mothers who had faced domestic violence from their sons.
Woman, unfortunately, is structured to take care of the nest, as we say. It's called nest worry. And the man is structured to be the hunter. The hunter is can get do anything to sort of to his prey. So the moment he starts feeling that preying on something, the behavior changes. And like I said, if he thinks he can get away, it gets worse, and the whole hell breaks loose.
It is mostly unnecessary, it is unwelcomed, and totally undesirable. It happens generally with people who are working in close proximity or in the line of command.
It came out that this manager had been asking favors from almost all his juniors. That one inquiry led to 7 other inquiries. So if a man is pervert, he's not going to stop at A, he's not going to stop at B. When Malvika approached me for doing a session on women's rights, she first sent me a write-up on the Constitution, that the Constitution guarantees equality to everybody. And really, I am so very much fond of the Constitution of India. I'm completely in awe of the Constitution of India. It's very easy to sit here in 2026 and talk about equality. In 1947, when India became independent, only 7% of our population was literate. Out of this 7%, only 1% of the women were literate. So from there, we have come to here, 2026. In 75 years, we have achieved 74% literacy amongst women, which is still far behind what the literacy rates amongst men. Amongst men, the literacy rates is about 80%. Yet, very serious anomalies and asymmetry exist in the society. Domestic violence was enacted in 2005. POSH was enacted in 2013. Today, we will discuss two things. Domestic violence, so how safe are women at home? And how safe is our corporate culture? And of course, we are very lucky to have a psychologist amongst ourselves. So, Advocate Aileen, I hope I have pronounced your name correctly. I'm so glad that we come from the same college, and I'm so happy to have this opportunity to interact with you face to face. I was just going through the Domestic Violence Act. It was enacted in 2005. Atul Subhash again changed the conversation around domestic violence. He made an 80-minute video. Yet, how effective is the act? And in your experience, is it really being misused?
Divya, it's nice to share the platform with you. Thank you. And thank you for the question. I think this is a narrative that has been around for a very long time. Like you said, the act has come in the year 2005. The rules were framed in 2006. And since the year 2006, we see the implementation of the law. As a lawyer who handles cases of domestic violence, I personally believe that there is very little scope in the law for misuse. So whether the law is misused is a question that may need a lot of introspection and data. When we talk about the Domestic Violence Act, we are primarily talking about reliefs that are civil in nature. A protection order, protection from domestic violence, a residence order, a right not to be thrown out of the house. We are talking about custody orders. We are talking about monthly maintenance or monetary relief, and we are talking about compensation. So these are the civil reliefs that are provided by the law. When we talk about cases of cruelty in general, okay, be it cruelty against women or be it cruelty against men, we find that we are conditioned to tolerate a certain level of cruelty. And we come to court only once things have gone beyond our limit or beyond our tolerance level. Dr. Ajoy will agree. We are, somewhere trapped in this cycle of violence and cycle of culture within our families. So very often the complaints are filed quite late in time, and the reliefs that are sought are very intense for that particular situation. For the reliefs that are sought, whether there is a misuse of the law, I wouldn't say that there is a misuse of the law. I personally believe that women are still not aware about the provisions of the law of domestic violence. Okay, I'm talking about the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act. Is there a percentage of men who are harassed? Yes, there is a percentage of men who are harassed, and that is, we see that in cases of cruelty or divorce that is filed on the ground of cruelty before the family courts. So, I would not have a straight answer to the question on whether the law is misused, because personally, I have not come across cases of misuse. I have come across cases of underutilization or very less awareness of the law even in
Completely.
2026.
No, I completely agree with you. World over, 60% of women are beaten in any relationship. This is the statistics, not specific to India, but world over. And besides marriages, domestic violence also protects women from violence by in a shared household. So there may be an instance where the brother is harassing the sister, and the scheme of the act is such that she can seek redressal. Have you done any such cases where the violence is not from the spouse, but the violence is from another male member, because our system is so patriarchal and male dominated? They can't even today, as we talk, men, they are a large fraction of men are upset that there are special laws for women. I don't even see why they should be upset. There are special laws for children. It takes a it takes a certain level of perversion to feel threatened because a section of society which is historically, which needs protection, is now getting protection. Why should anybody feel threatened about it? Why should anybody feel offended about it? But the question I wanted to ask you is, besides spouses, have anybody come to you seeking, invoking, has anybody come to you invoking domestic violence against a male member of the household other than a husband?
Divya, one of the large section of women who avail of the Domestic Violence Act are women who are senior citizens. In my term as a lawyer working with the Legal Services Authority, during COVID alone, in the first phase, I came across around 20 mothers who had faced domestic violence from their sons. And out of that, sorry, we filed 20 cases, and there were many other cases because my number was given as a helpline number in cases of distress at that point in time. So, over a period of time, yes, I filed personally cases for mothers, for daughters, for the sister-in-law, the unmarried sister-in-law in the house, and women who are not in matrimonial relationships. Personally, I have seen a trend of women who are now senior citizens approaching the court, preferably under the Domestic Violence Act, rather than the earlier, 125 CRPC for maintenance, because we see that in Bombay now property has become a very big requirement, and the younger generation today are not in a position to own property. So there is a possibility of mothers being disentitled from property or thrown away from property or forcefully properties taken away from them. So in such cases, yes, there have been cases of domestic violence filed in non-matrimonial relationships, and also there is a trend of unmarried daughters filing cases against their parents when they have faced domestic violence for various reasons.
What an insight, advocate. Really, what an insight. This is what's happening in the domestic, when it is all the more worse when something like this happens at home. You're supposed to be secure at your home. Your home is your castle, and even there you're not safe. How safe are our corporates? We had POSH was enacted in 2013. Today it's 2026, more than a decade. It was enacted more than a decade back. So, Sowmya, my question to you, Advocate Sowmya, my question, who's also an HR expert, and therefore, hence the question. My question to you is, how effective has POSH been in implementation in reality?
Thanks, Divya. And that's a very interesting question. Um, Now, successful implementation happens at two levels. Okay. First is the cultural level. So when you say organization, it's at a cultural level. The second part is the enforcement of the act. Now, when you look at employees, nobody really looks at the manual uh, and comes to you with a problem, but everybody looks at leadership behavior. And in most cases, the immediate reporting manager is the representative of the management, whether they stand by the employees, whether they believe in them, what has been the past experience. So all of this is a summation of defining what the culture of the organization would be. Now, whether, when you look at implementation, the very first step is to, file or talk about it. And, it totally depends on whether the person, whether he would complain. It depends on the belief in the culture, which will, which largely again is shaped, like I said, by the management. So the reputation of the management culture decides on whether an employee comes forward and expects redressal. So that is one part. The second part is enforcement of the act itself. Now, largely this is in place. If you look at, at a governance level, at a government level, you have a act in place. You have most of the organizations defining the act. I mean, it's largely aligned to the POSH Act. You will also see, now the Companies Act coming in, with amendments. There is governance. So there is corporate governance and public accountability. So the policy acts as a deterrent, but culture is primarily the driver of effectiveness.
So how do you set the culture right? I mean, these gender sensitization sessions that we have they had any impact, any bearing on the conduct of the people? We talk about law as a means of social engineering. We can change the society. Between you were in HR field before POSH was enacted. You continue to be in HR. You had a very high position at present. Has POSH, the fact that there is somebody watching over us, has it led to some sort of better on ground? Has it led to a better culture? Has it led to a safer culture? Has it led to a less sexist culture? Because sexism is also something that women have to fight with. Oh, you're a woman. This is not meant for you. You should be happy with mid-management level. Don't have higher aspirations. Maybe, yes.
Yeah. So I would say one is, yes, the sensitization, it plays a major role, but sensitization to who? So that's again an important aspect. So there are trainings for the managers, which are curated to say, okay, if the situation happens, how do you deal with that? And, equip them to take on. It becomes a shared responsibility. The second part, of course, is to ensure that every individual knows their boundary. So the awareness and the spread of, the do's and don'ts, sometimes people from, India, again, we have different sort of culture, and, one may think that this is okay, the other feel that, okay, this is not okay. How do you define that, boundary? And that's largely spoken about during the, during the communication sessions, the training sessions, which also helps build that culture across different career levels.
Well, now I would like to turn to Dr. Ajoy. We heard Advocate Aileen, we heard Advocate Sowmya. Women, mothers seeking protection, being beaten up by their sons. I mean, absolutely shocking. Corporate culture too is not the very fact that we have a law like this. That means that the corporate culture is, there are anomalies in the corporate culture. What, from a psychological perspective, what leads people to harass women? Where does it come from? We just need your psychological perspective on harassment. What makes people feel if they see a woman, isko to heran karenge?
So in our circles, in psychologists, we have this pet statement. We say that actually any behavior of the harassing type, like we talk about sexual harassment a lot these days, and we say that sexual harassment is not about sex, it's about power. And ultimately, it is the power equation that makes us believe that we can do something and we cannot do something. Even if you come to the common law, most of the things we don't do is because we think that there is a law and that we might get punished. If you ask in our hearts of hearts, the question is, what would you do if nobody is looking, right? And that is probably your, what I would call true nature, if there is a term like that. But rest of it is orchestrated. We all behave the way we are expected to behave. We behave differently at home. We behave differently on the street. We behave differently in the office. It's because we know that the paradigm has changed, the laws are different, and the consequences are also reasonably different, and sometimes detrimental, sometimes unpleasant, and sometimes and mostly undesirable, right? So we behave. So this word behavior is a very dynamic issue in psychology. So when it comes to overpowering somebody, and if you have the environment that nobody is likely to watch or know, nobody will know, you're likely to do. The chances go up directly. So it is a game of chance. So when you know that it is likely to be detrimental, the chances are low. But it still happens. When you know that you have the power and you're unlikely to be punished, the chances are high. But you may still not do it. Like someone was speaking about culture. What is culture? It's a completely artificially conjured setup under which everybody behaves desirably. That's my definition of culture. You don't know what the person is going to do next the moment you have turned your back. It may not be his true self, but we are okay with that. As long as you behave the way you're expected to all the time, it's fine. I don't really need to know your real you. So when it comes to abuse, especially when getting physical, it is when this threshold is crossed, when you're not able to take it, when you think that you can get away with, an action, and when you feel that you have the power, and many a times, unfortunately, when you feel that you have the right to act the way you have done. Most of the cases that, say, for example, reach the court are that. And many of these cases you will see come after many, many years. People tolerate, like Aileen was saying. It's because of this. They don't know when the equation changes. And just like many of the perpetrators who feel that they have the right to do this, unfortunately, many of the victims also feel that they have the duty to bear this. Speaking from the law, but I'm actually speaking from the structure of the mind. And it gets worse when it comes to man and woman. Woman, unfortunately, is structured to take care of the nest, as we say. It's called nest worry. And the man is structured to be the hunter. And, the hunter can do anything to sort of to his prey. So the moment he starts feeling that preying on something, the behavior changes. And like I said, if he thinks he can get away, it gets worse and the whole hell breaks loose. So that's the fundamental definition.
It is quite interesting that you mentioned that women are very late to complain. It's something that and you mentioned it from the perspective of a psychologist. It's exactly what Advocate Aileen mentioned, and when uh, whilst answering the first question, that women put up with nonsense. It's not that they get beaten up and then they go to the magistrate. They put up with a lot of nonsense before saying enough is enough. Advocate Arlene, on this point, can you just, because I'm so shocked by the fact that there are so many mothers who are being beaten up by their sons. And we look at domestic violence only in terms of the husband beating the wife up. Can you just now, tell us what can a woman do within the parameters of the Domestic Violence Act if she is threatened? The instances that I have dealt with, uh, as far as domestic violence is concerned, is non-payment of alimony by husband. And of course, along with that, when you handle divorce proceedings, it's a bundle of other issues that you take to the court. But here is an instance where women other than spouses are being have to invoke the act. What happens then? What are the remedies? Do they continue? How safe are they continuing in the same household? How safe are they? living in the same house. Homes in Mumbai are expensive. I can't imagine being in a shelter home. Yes.
So there have been cases where women have opted to go to the one stop center. One stop center is an initiative provided by the government where women who have faced extreme violence and are either thrown out of the house or locked out of the house can seek shelter in a government provided place for 5 days. And they are provided medical treatment, they're provided a lawyer, they're provided a protection officer, and every district has one. If we talk about other states, in Mumbai we have one for Mumbai city and one for Mumbai suburbs. Now there are women who have explored these options. There are women who have gone and lived with NGOs shelter, and there are other women who've sought shelter outside. But now over the past, I think, uh, post COVID, the instances of women wanting to live in the house and then file a case not to be thrown out of the house or to be protected in that house have increased. The reason being, students, school exams are there. They cannot move to a place that is away from school, and then the children have to travel. Then there are instances where maybe the woman is working and the home is closer to her. She's able to provide for her children and also manage her work. So these are some instances that have come forward. When we talk about women who are senior citizens, generally they have grown up around these houses or they have lived in these houses for 40, 50 years and they do not want to move to a different place. So there was this one very interesting case that I remember where it was a chawl, and thereafter after redevelopment they got a two-bedroom house and they lived in that two-bedroom house, and the son was married and the woman lived with the son in that house. But after the son's family grew, it was difficult for the woman to have her own privacy in that house, or she was not able to live life on the terms that she wanted to, like wake up at 4 in the morning, do her puja. It was very difficult for her, go off to sleep by 8:39. It was difficult. And then there were cases of domestic violence that were there. There was verbal abuse, emotional abuse, economic abuse that was seen. And this lady approached the court, and she told the court, I want to live in my house peacefully. I am now 74. I want to live here peacefully till my last breath. And I remember the son came in there and he said, she's one woman. I can give her a one room house to live and she can just move out of this house. And the woman said, no, this was my hard earned money. I purchased that small jhopda, which today is a two-bedroom, and I want to live here peacefully till my last breath. This house has memories of my husband. This house has memories of your childhood, and I do not want to live this house. And the judge allowed them some time for mediation to talk about it. And the man said, I cannot afford a two-bedroom house. And then, by some intervention, the man agreed to move out of the house with his family and he allowed the mother to live in that house. Now, this is one of the very few cases where amicably they came to a term and the mother continued to live in the house. But otherwise, there is an increase in cases where women seek residence in the house, seek not to be thrown out of the house. And one of the most important relief that we seek under the Domestic Violence Act for senior citizen women is protection. Protection from mental abuse. There have been cases of sexual abuse. Their undergarments being thrown on the windows of the house. There have been cases of the children having sex in front of them so that they leave the house. So there have been cases of their videos being taken while having bath. So there have been such cases that have been reported. So when we talk about especially women who are senior citizens, one is physical abuse cases are quite few as compared to the emotional verbal abuse and economic abuse that we see, not giving them money for their medicine, taking away their jewelry, taking away their money, not allowing them to operate bank accounts, not giving them the papers of the house, keeping away the ration card or taking control over their Aadhaar card. So these are some cases that we have seen. With the awareness that has happened about the law that is ongoing, now we see a lot of women today are ready to speak. There are these community support groups that are formed, so women come out and they speak, and especially senior citizen women are now more vocal about the abuse that they face.
Are there some, maybe in the chat box, we can mention some NGOs who help senior citizen women, since they are vulnerable, they are women, they are senior citizens. They don't have, typically women are not as most of an average, on an average, women spend some 20, 10 to 15 years. They give 10 to 15 years to their children. That also means that for 10 to 15 years, they were not earning. Even if they were earning, the bank accounts are usually held jointly with a male member. So if you can, in the chat box, write
Yeah.
names of the NGOs who can help such women. I think even now I feel I need to spread the word around. My next
Also, Divya, if I may mention, there are protection officers who are officers of the court. Now, protection officers are a functionary under the law who are a bridge between the woman and the court. So they are supposed to be officers of the court. Now, every police station has a designated protection officer. So when a woman who faces violence goes to the police station, she can be then led forward to the protection officer, who will then fill a DIR, file her case in court. So that is the immediate relief. The protection officer can also rescue them from places of violence and abuse. The protection officer has powers to visit the house to get a certain things that are immediate or necessary at that point in time. So the protection officer has wide powers. So now we also promote having information about the protection officer for the police jurisdiction or the jurisdiction of your police station, so that in cases of violence you can call them up. Their numbers are displayed everywhere and women can approach them. And I will surely share the details of the NGOs that are there.
Advocate, one of the questions that I really wanted to ask is, once these women decide to book the perpetrators of injustice, be it their son, spouses, what is, and you're not asking, you can't divorce your son, but what is the or maybe a husband. In a case, in marital, okay, you have divorce, you go separate ways and full stop. Sometimes you may have to live in the same house. So, in your experience, once somebody has taken recourse to domestic violence case, has the nature of offense been repetitive? Has the abuse stopped, or it has continued?
If the applicant, the complainant, and the respondent live under the same roof, we generally ask for protection orders. Protection orders in the nature that no acts of domestic violence should be committed. And if there is a violation of that act, then a FIR can be registered under Section 31 of the law, Section 31 and 32. So generally, one approach that we tend to, take more often than not is also sending them to some NGO for counseling. So if there are anger issues, if there are economic issues, there is also mediation that is going on simultaneously if they are living under the same roof. And because the dates are like, once every 15 days or once a month, so the reporting to the court happens very often. So depending on the change in circumstance, change in order can also be requested. It is difficult when they live under the same roof, but we have got cases of prohibitory orders, not to enter the room that is occupied by the lady, to have to not to use this passage, especially for chawls, not to use the front passage, or not to lock the door. So these are some prohibitory orders which the courts grant looking at the circumstances of the case that are there. In cases where flats are involved, we've got orders not to enter the bedroom which is occupied by the applicant, not to access her valuables, or not to access her other things that are kept there. So these orders are possible. In one particular case, we got an order saying that the applicant should be allowed to use the kitchen from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m., and then again whatever times were asked by her. And so there are these orders that come depending on the facts of the case, but implementing them sometimes is difficult, and then you have to be constantly in touch with your client to ensure that they feel safe in that place.
Sowmya, we had it was it was really interesting listening to Advocate Aileen discuss instances of domestic violence and how they combated domestic violence. What we need to know from you are, what are the most frequently encountered, what is the nature of harassment that occurs most frequently at workplace?
Touch, okay, is one, and comments which are sexual in nature. These are the most common one that get reported, and there's also data available on these aspects. It's a little uh, interesting to note that it's the top two, even when you look at the data globally. The common characteristic of these kind of behavior is it is mostly unnecessary, it is unwelcomed, and totally undesirable. It happens generally with people who are working in close proximity or in the line of command. But these two are the one which mostly we hear of in the corporate sector.
Surprisingly, when POSH was enacted, and at that time, when we started receiving complaints, we realized that education, you would think that schools and colleges are the safest places, but most of the serious complaints were coming from schools, where you have a number of lady teachers. The principal is invariably a man. And a number of cases that we came across were instances of, asking lady colleagues, juniors for favors and in similar inducements for promotion. And that too was something that, we have come across. Of course, one of the things that during this conversation that came up is women bear a lot of pain. There is a lot of delay. And men don't bear that level of pain before going to court or taking action, but women do. Dr. Ajoy, why? Why are women so hesitant? We have the law, but they just don't seem to come forward.
Well, I mean, I'll have to use some psychological terms if you're interested to
Oh,
make
yes.
things easier to understand. One basic thing is the need for psychological safety is high in women. Like I mentioned earlier, women were the keeper of the nest, if I may use a word like that. Psychologically, it's called the nest, which is everything around you, your home, or in where you nurture your family. So, most important thing for the nest is safety. Everything else can come later or not come at all, right? So this psyche, if I may use the word, gets extended to wherever the woman goes. It can happen at the workplace. It can happen in public area. It can happen on, when they travel. But the thought is always of psychological safety. Is this place safe for me? How do I keep it safe? How do I don't disturb the safety? Everything revolves around that. So now if you ask a woman, now she's actually faced some kind of a, say, harassment at the workplace, let's say, she won't come to complain for quite some time. One aspect of that is this psychological safety, need for psychological safety, because these are the people who you work with otherwise, right? So you don't want to disturb the nest. That is one aspect. The second one is that biologically, there is a program which runs called the freeze conflict. The moment something happens, especially from people in power, or superior to you, the biological, it's a survival program in all human beings, men as well. You must have heard this story of two friends walking in the forest, and a bear comes and one climbs up the tree and the other acts dead, and the bear comes and sniffs him and then leaves, doesn't kill him. And the friend comes down and say, "What did the bear say?" He said, "The bear said, don't trust, uh, you know, uh, friends who don't." I mean, something like that. But that was a story. But the fact is that this reaction to play dead is called the freeze reaction. If any threat goes beyond your imagination control, or where you think you can't do much, where the power equation is extreme, like somebody mentioned, like if it's a chain of command, boss and subordinate, what can you do? It's your boss. You know that you can't sort of hit him back, or you can't sort of shout at him. So the first reaction is to freeze. And this freeze reaction is many a times the cause for, not complaining or delaying and complaining, mulling over it. That's psychological side. And the other one is very simply called cognitive dissonance. What is cognitive dissonance? That you start feeling that, yaar, mere mein hi kuch kharabi hogi. Maybe did I do something wrong? Why did this happen? So you start justifying, self-blame, denial, all those things that start coming. It's a natural process. Now, somebody needs to push you out of that. One, knowing that there is a law sometimes helps. Two, having a friend who tells you, "No, no, you don't go, I'll go," helps. If you have a boss who is more, trustworthy, cooperating, that helps. But if none of this is there, it will take time for the lady to come across. In fact, there is something, called the, what do I call it? It's like secondary victimization. One, there is a main victim, and then there is people around them who also start sharing this, victimization, and all of them together feel, nay, 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 maybe let's let it be. In fact, a lot of this happens even with lawyers who deal cases like these. I don't know if Eileen has had that experience. You sort of start internalizing their problems, of the people who actually you're trying to help. That's also secondary victimization. And then you say, "Oh, this happened then, and you're coming now." It's a very common statement you hear, especially in corporates. And then that becomes part of the blame. And then the woman says, "Ah, yes, maybe I should also have been careful, let me see." So this all leads to what is called institutional apathy. Am I making sense? So
Yeah,
institutional
yeah, yeah.
apathy is what then, like Sowmya said, then leads to the lack of trust, or you feel that, "nahi, yahan to kuch nahi ho sakta," and generally everything goes back to normal as if nothing happened. I mean, after some time, you'll see that the employee has left, quietly, and life goes on. Not the boss, the victim.
Victim.
That's what very often happens. So this power play, like I mentioned in the opening statement,
Huh.
is the beginning. Now,
Yeah.
what is power? Basic power is control. So if you want to find out if something has happened, you just need to find out who's having control over who, which is very easy to find out in a corporate. Like, you have designations, you have reporting managers, you have, superior and inferior departments, you have big bosses. So everybody looks at the boss. If they feel that boss will, is fair, then everything is fair. If boss will help, then everything will help. So this is how it goes. So that chain of command is the power control equation. If that is disturbed, then
No, that's, I mean, that is something which is really scary in the sense that these
apathy,
are the,
unfortunately, is not just institutional, it's also individual. We also, to a great extent, as individuals, have begun to be feeling apathy as normal.
Hmm.
So we do have this tendency to let it be. Dekha jayega. But believe you me, nothing really, what goes around comes around. In all of these cases, you would see that it may be delay, but it's not denial, and justice usually tends to happen. And that's usually when the power equation changes. When the power equation is the same, it's very difficult to expect so-called justice or things to change. And but when the power equation changes, immediately, prompto, you will see what needs to be done happens. You can definitely be hopeful of it.
no, I completely agree. When I was doing,
Which may not be very far away from the examples that you mentioned.
when I look at the statistics, 11% of the CEOs today are only 11% of the CEOs of Fortune 500 company are women. We cannot direct corporate policies. Quotaism of any sort, women's reservation, this quota, that quota, are just tokenisms. If we have to empower women, it has to be by making them more powerful from within. Why do I have to depend on my father for a house in Bombay? Why do I have to depend on my husband? I have children, I can raise them on my own. Women should have that confidence. Why do I look for safety? I'm safe. Let's step out with that presumption I'm safe. So, Dr. Advocate Ali, you have given such wonderful, wonderful insights. But obviously, there is something lacking. If you had to fix the loopholes, what would you suggest?
Loopholes in terms of the implementation of the law. Is that what you're looking at?
Implementation of the law, if there's something we are, as a society, you feel that this has to be addressed, please let us know.
So, Divya, one very important point that Dr. Ajoy raised was about control and power dynamics. So, even if we see the Sas Bahu relation, there is power dynamics there. And then we have media that glamorizes how a mother-in-law has to behave, how a daughter-in-law has to behave. We need to unlearn a lot of this. We need to unlearn how women are conditioned, to believe that this is a SOP for your life. Marriage is essential. You have to have save for your marriage. We don't talk about women saving for houses or women investing in houses. We generally talk about women buying jewelry, saving for marriages. So there are a lot of things that we need to unlearn as women. On one hand, we talk about empowerment, but on the other hand, there is a lot of patriarchal norms that are, very subtly infused in us from childhood. And we need to somewhere unlearn these things. We also need to work with men. Like yesterday, I had a session at the community level. We had 25 women and we were discussing the Domestic Violence Act. Now, these women in the heart of Mumbai, for the first time, heard about the Domestic Violence Act in 2026, and they were aged between 23 to 30. That was their age, and they are champions who are going to take this cause forward. So at the community level, yes, we need to work across class barriers, but I think specifically we need to work with the youth and children when we talk about dismantling societal roles that have been, forcibly entrusted on boys and girls. And that to a larger extent will also help with handling or dealing with the challenges of the POSH Act that are there. The second aspect, as I see it, is as women, I agree with everything that Dr. Ajoy has said, that women doubt their own caliber, they doubt their own, their own positive approach to life. They feel burdened by a lot of things. They want to be the superwoman. So, a lot of these things need to be discussed with women, and we need to give them role models of people who have dealt with all these things. For today, for a woman, Bollywood is the role model, or we have some person from the corporate sector who talks a few gyan wala shabd, and then they want to incorporate all of that in life. But how do you lead a normal life? How do you lead the life of a woman in a egalitarian society or in a equitable society? I think is something that we don't have a format or a SOP for. So positive stories need to be spoken about. We need to talk about marriages that are equitable. We need to talk about parenting that is equitable. We need to talk about choices. Women need to be visible at the home. They need to be visible in choices that they make. And I think these are some approaches that can really empower women. As far as the law is concerned, the law is a multiple stakeholder law. So we have protection officers, we have police, we have judiciary, we have social workers, we have welfare experts, we have counselors. Now, getting all of them on the same platform for the effective implementation of the law is a challenge. So, implementation of the law to a larger extent suffers when we talk about multiple stakeholder response. So, yes, in that approach, we need to also, to a larger extent, the Domestic Violence Act was monitored. There was this monitoring and evaluation report that was there till the time I worked with Lawyers Collective. We monitored the law. And I think over a period of time, it's important for us now to monitor the law and to see what are the trends and challenges that the law brings. And one glaring aspect about the law, I think today is the way the government is not able to reach out in terms of the services of protection officers who have multiple other responsibilities. And then it's also about shelter homes not being sufficient for women. So these are few thoughts that I would like to share.
Well, thank you so much. And I hope the correct people are listening to this. We will need awareness. We will need better infrastructure in terms of strengthening the police force, in terms of shelter homes. Sowmya, what challenges do organizations face while implementing POSH?
Mainly it is underreporting. Okay. And the underreporting is not due to lack of a structure or a process, um, or awareness. All this is there, but still there is underreporting. And the other, or how we can make it better, is a shared responsibility. Again, I would go back to my first response on culture. So if the line managers actually, share this responsibility and take ownership, because they are the first and be the first port of call, uh, you know, a lot of this trust can be built within the system. We've seen on several occasions, so once there is, when such things get reported, and the line manager is involved, they would say, okay, you know what, I'll help you. Why don't you go and speak to XYZ? The trust is lost there, so they may not have solutions to all the problems. They're not expected to, but can they empathize, listen, and just be there as a first port of call and walk that journey with them? I think that will kind of largely uh, build trust in the system and, uh, serve this cause of underreporting. But yeah, so one main challenge is the fact that it is happening whether you know it or not. The rest of it, of course, you can then act on and,
One of my advocate friends who was on is a member of ICC committee, and we were just we were just talking about POSH. It so happened that one woman mustered the courage and came up to her, and then she initiated an inquiry. It came out that this manager had been asking favors from almost all his juniors. That one inquiry led to 7 other inquiries. So if a man is pervert, he's not going to stop at A, he's not going to stop at B. He needs to be taught a lesson.
absolutely, absolutely.
So yes, I agree, underreporting is a problem. Again, it comes to the same thing. We have the act, but people are hesitant.
Culture.
Women, it also, now only 95% of workforce is organized. Of that 95%, I don't know what percentage forms are women. So it goes to, one aspect that I wanted to highlight is it's still underserved. Women are still underserviced. What percentage of women are really protected by this act? Are the construction workers protected by this act? How many construction workers have come forward to say that my
That's true.
contractor has abused me, which we know happens? There are movies based on abuse of construction workers. Dr. Ajay, you need to tell us what are the limitations and how do we get around them?
Well, I can tell you in corporates, underreporting, of course, is an issue, but under deterrence is a bigger issue. Even if let's assume that the lady has reported, there has been an inquiry, they have found out who it is, it's very unlikely that something serious happens to the person. He may probably be transferred to another department, or still worse, the lady may get transferred to another department, which is many times usually the case. It's very sad, but it's true. Or he may be kicked out of the job, right? Nothing more than that. Like you said, he'll go somewhere else and start it all over again. So these are tendencies, in psychology, tendencies are quite deep rooted. Unless you go back to, a deep sea counseling and childhood, you can't make out where this begins from. Like I said, these are all denominators. It's very difficult to, control the denominator, because as long as the denominator is bigger than the numerator, you'll only get a fraction. You'll never get a whole number. So how much you may try to implement all the laws exactly, you can't protect all the women. Yeah, there's one way, is that you increase the numerator. You make them say, let's say financially much better off. I'm just thinking of a very stray example. Then these things probably won't even occur, but they're very far from it. But that's a more raw way of solving the issue, by increasing the numerator than working on and on about the new denominator. We need to work, not that you forget about the denominator, but the simpler way would be to get people to become, far greater than the new denominators in which they are living right now. And law can help there. Like, people in charge of these kind of initiatives can make a difference there. It's not just about saving somebody from, say, abuse, but also the cause of the abuse. And usually it's money. I mean, it's been my experience as well. It's for money usually that problem starts, and it only ends with sort of money. So women, I think, need to be financially independent and financially secure. If that's one thing that we can actually do, at least for our next generation, that's what definitely I would try to do. Then it doesn't matter where they are and who they are with. Then nobody dare sort of, try anything funny with them. That's, according to me, the easier way.
Doctor, you mentioned financial empowerment. I mean, I 100% believe in financial. I believe that women, and I'm so thankful to my school. I went to a school where we were constantly told that don't don't rely your husband for money, no matter whom you're married to. Work, have a job, earn your own money. And we had teachers coming, I'm talking about in 1990s, coming to school in chauffeur-driven cars for and teaching is not the most remunerative profession in any part of the world. The one thing I wanted to really, if Advocate Aileen could share her views, is that harassment of women is not limited. It can be mitigated by a large extent through financial empowerment. But we have seen women, well-placed women have been abused, well-placed women have been harassed. So, Dr. Aileen, what is your, what is your, Advocate Aileen, what is your experience? Is finance the only, is money the only reason why women are harassed, or women across society, across classes are subject to harassment?
Divya, women across classes have faced harassment. Generally, it is the women who are financially independent or who have, sufficient sources of income who are more reluctant to approach the court. Generally, women who are deprived of the financial resources or who are alienated from their finances are quicker to approach the court because they depend on money. But if a woman is earning well and she has the money, and for some reason part of that money is taken away from her, she then delays to approach the court because she has something to manage. In my experience, I think over the past many years, I have seen that women across the economic sector, women across professions have faced domestic violence. And financial abuse is one of the many abuses that they face. One of the first cases I dealt with was of a lady gynecologist who is a very well-known, professional in Mumbai, and we had an in-camera trial in 2006, 2007. Now that lady was earning quite well. There was a lady who was the MD of a company whose money and bank accounts were isolated from her. So, women have resources or they are earning well, but very often they are denied access to these resources. And then, they end up facing abuse. So, I think economic independence is important, but sustaining your financial capacity, I think, is something that women need to learn and understand, because women get emotionally carried away. They give away their money, they take up loans, they take up economic liabilities for the spouse, for the children, and then they are more struggling. They're struggling in trying to balance their finances even though they earn well. So I think women need to sustain that economic benefit that they have and try to make it an asset rather than getting carried away in involving themselves in liabilities for the family.
I think financial literacy amongst women, even earning women, is very low. Invariably, women earn money, they give their paycheck to their husbands, they give their paycheck to their father. They just feel that the men in the house can manage the finance better than women. I've had juniors, I've had associates. And every time I ask my associates, what they do with the money, the answer is the same. My husband managed the finances. I am quite tired of by now listening to this nonsense about what does your husband do? My husband is in finance. And what sort of finance does he do? He handles my finances. I mean, if I'm earning, why can't I handle my finances? Honestly.
That is the nest. That is the nest speaking. That is the
No,
obsession with the nest.
if we didn't have time constraints, I mean, I need to thank all three of you. It has been a wonderful, wonderful interaction. I hope the audience too enjoyed it as much. I need to thank Advocate Aileen for wonderful insights into what's happening around the society. That violence is not limited to a certain section of women who are vulnerable. Violence has to some extent is germane to our society. We need to address this. There are laws, but there is not enough awareness around the laws. So thank you, Advocate Aileen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We need to thank Dr. Ajoy Kurup for his wonderful insights, for letting us know what happens when there is institutional apathy, for letting us know that we need to empower our women from within. All these laws are okay, they are, but we need to bring about a cultural and societal change. First, we need to tell our girls, you don't have to feel safe. If you want to do something, go out there, do it. And if somebody is attacking you, attack back. Don't look for safety. Don't look for, there is no such thing as nest, break the nest. Huh? Redeem your soul, break the nest. Dr. Sowmya, Advocate Sowmya, HR experts, thank you so much for highlighting that cases are still underreported. Underreporting works, according to me, at different levels. Underreporting does not change the culture. You may have a POSH policy, you may have an act, but the culture continues. The unhealthy environment continues. So, of course, I would like all three of you to put up your concluding remarks, but thank you so much. And thanks a lot. I had a wonderful, wonderful time discussing women's issues, women's safety at work and at home with all three of you. And then maybe we can take the questions from the audience.
Thank you, Divya. I think it was a lovely session, great insights, and from all three aspects of psychology, law, and the corporate. So thanks for the opportunity.
And I think I would only conclude by saying that there is work to be done on the gender identity.
Yeah.
It actually comes down to that, finally. Women have already left the nest. It's just that they're carrying it with them. They need to know that it is something that they can go back to. So this need for safety, first of all, has to reduce, like you mentioned, Divya. Safety will then come. The obsession with safety has to go. So if there is less obsession with safety, then the feeling of unsafe or being able to identify what is safe and unsafe will be easier. And then you will actually come out and fight against it. Today, they don't even know the difference or when the line has been broken. So we are getting there. It's not that it's not happening, but it's only happening mostly at so-called upper echelons. It needs to be taken down. And I think people like Aileen are doing a stellar job in that. Aileen, I mean, I'm really happy to have been on the same stage with you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Divya. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Dr. Ajoy. There is a lot of learning for me from the insights in psychology that you've shared with regard to how women approach the issue. Divya, it's nice to share the platform with you, and thank you for moderating it so well that the insights at different levels are surely thought provoking, and I'm sure the participants would have gained a lot. To conclude, I would want to say that women need to understand that they have a right to life with dignity and personal liberty. And right to life is right to live without violence. And once women are aware of that, slowly it will manifest in the way they lead their life.
Thank you so much. We can take questions from the audience.
Thank you so much. It was an eye opening discussion. Advocate Reshma asked, why is wearing salwar kameez to a corporate office such a big issue nowadays? We are looked down upon. Any remarks on this?
Well, I would say there is something called harassment and there is something called bullying. The bullying is again another aspect of maybe it comes from power structures. So I think this is I personally don't much care what a person wears, but yes, I don't think person is particularly looked down if he wears a salwar kameez, but
Sorry, did I hear the question right? Wearing salwar kameez to office was prevented. Is that, I mean, where?
Yeah, it's discriminated against, not sent to client's office, not given chances to for presentations.
is that the only reason? We have
Yeah,
had instances where people have come very shabbily
may
dressed,
not be the only reason.
No,
unprepared.
So, Divya, if I may just share something, a few organizations have their policy where women are expected to come dressed in a Western attire, and women are not allowed to, wear a salwar suit or a kurti. That to a larger extent is considered discriminatory because you're not allowed to exercise your right to choice. So if there is a issue to that extent, you can take it up with your HR, especially in keeping with the sexual harassment at workplace policy, where we talk about a workplace that is, safe for women. It would also mean that you wear a dress of your choice. But if there are parameters of dressing that have been already listed, you need to discuss that with the HR of your organization. That is what I would like to say.
Okay. The next question, Advocate Ashwini has made a remark that she dealt with a case where a young couple, the husband subjected the wife to cruelty, but later realized that he always saw his father mistreating the mother and thought that's how it is supposed to be. So, should the psychology of the psychology of children of victims of domestic violence be dealt with? Should state take some measures in this regard?
I think all three of us would completely agree that counseling and mental health is one of the most underrated fields in India. We look at physical health, we have general practitioners, but nobody goes to psychologists. The population, 1.5 billion population, and nobody, I mean, we don't have a concept of counseling. That is something which I think everybody should take note of. From today's session, we've learned so much from Dr. Kurup, from Aileen, from Advocate Sowmya, based on experience, and it was mostly at during our interaction, all three of them at some stage or the other did mention psychology, did mention counseling, did mention mediation. So
Yes. The next question is for Eileen ma'am. Eileen ma'am, you train judicial officers and police personnel. What, according to you, are their attitudes? Because a lot of times the victims approach the police, but police ask them to settle it amicably.
With regard to the police, if we see the new joinees that have come in the past 2 years, they are much more sensitized to the issue, and they tend to, make it a safe place for women to talk, especially also when dealing with children who face child sexual abuse. So the newer batch joinees are much more sensitized. When we talk about the government department at various levels, we see that they are patriarchal to a larger extent. And we have people who make comments like हमारे घर पे भी होता है, थोड़ा बहुत होता है, but we don't file a complaint. So we need to work with, that is why I say we need to work with children, so that irrespective of whatever career you take up, you are sensitized, and you bring that whole perspective of equality and non-violence. And I think non-violence is something that we need to promote within the family, within our cultures, because violence is such an important aspect of life. We never talk about non-violence. So in the different trainings that I have done, especially also with training schools, like Divya said, schools were the first places where we see violence. So even teachers over there will tell us that violence is something that they have grown up with, and today with the law in place, they have to check their systems. So yes, there is a perspective shift that is required, but the newer ones have adapted to the law and the requirements of the law.
Yes. There's one question. Can you give an example of what is colored remark under definition of sexual harassment?
colored remark, anything, any sexually loaded comment. It it it's not important whether a person really had a intention to sexually harass somebody or it resulted in some sort of molestation. A non-veg joke is a colored remark. You very common thing if typically lady colleague passes by and um, male colleague says things like item hai, and all this is absolutely unacceptable. Or lady passes by, two male colleagues chat amongst themselves, and even if they laugh in a manner which suggests that something is wrong with her, or she's paying, she is asking for attention, that too is an instance of sexual harassment.
The technical definition of colored remark is it's a remark which you can't hold against somebody. It usually has double meaning. So you can say, I didn't item, I meant item, but I didn't mean anything, bad. So it has, that's how it is colored. It's everybody who listens knows what it's about, but technically you can't pin him down saying that you said this is what you meant. So the meaning and the statement, when there's a dichotomy, then it's a color term.
Okay, sir. The next question is, are there any citations wherein a woman at a overnight work visit was requested to share a room with the male colleague or male superior, but she declined it and later company took an action against her?
I have read a case. I've read a case where, unfortunately, this happened in a government department. The male, boss would ask invariably on an outstation trip, uh, you know, uh, take a woman, lady colleague along with him. Finally, one girl had the courage to report the case. He would make unreasonable demands like, coming over for dinner to his room instead of having it in a restaurant. And then this lady was asked to finish off all the biryani. Then he started adjusting her clothes. So this is a reported incident, and it happened in the government department. Came to news. He was pulled up. I think he was dismissed, but I've read instances.
You can just ask AI, you'll get it, if there is one.
Yes. The next question: how are cases of mental cruelty quantified, and what evidence is admissible in the court in cases of mental cruelty, both at the workplace and in domestic cases?
I think Sowmya and Aileen should be able to bat that question.
Difficult to prove.
So,
Very
in
difficult.
terms of mental cruelty, impact is very important. If there are words that have been said and that has caused you emotional mental anguish, emotional distress, and the impact of that is something that can be quantified. So in cases of domestic violence, we have had cases where a use of a certain word constantly has affected the woman, and she has had to seek mental health expertise, or she has gone in for different ways of trying to soothe herself or trying to deal with the situation. So in such cases we have placed on record the medical history and other things, and the courts have considered that. Also, like Dr. Ajoy said, it is difficult to prove it. But now, when we look at the manifestation, okay, very often it starts with mental cruelty, but somewhere down the line, it manifests somewhere in terms of either a physical cruelty or a sexual cruelty. So we need to sit with the client and understand whether it's only an isolated case of mental harassment, or it has then moved on to take a form of physical abuse or sexual abuse, and then it becomes very easy to understand. I'll give you an example, if I have just a minute. There was this case of a lady who was married in Ahmedabad, and in Ahmedabad, her in laws called her Gutter Wali. Now, for 3 years, she constantly heard the word Gutter Wali, and she wrote letters to her father that this is what they call me. Mumbai गटरों का शहर है तो gutter gutter gutter. And then, because of that emotional abuse, she started getting into depression, and she conceived, and then she was brought to Bombay with 43% burns. Now, when she came and she was in the hospital in the ICU, all these letters that were written over a period of time helped the doctors understand her mental state, and also helped the doctors to treat her at that point in time. So it was physical injury as well as her own mental, distress that had caused her further violence. And the child in her womb had, was suffering because of this. So, very often, women today have started talking about it. We have media posts that are there. I think online abuse is not something that we've discussed today, but online abuse is another aspect that we see. So, women make some post, have some sharings that are there. So, all of this, to a larger extent, can be placed before the court.
No, I'm so glad Dr. Eileen brought up Advocate Eileen brought up the issue of cyber harassment. Cyber harassment is, besides it happens to everybody, the first, it's President Macron's wife, Brigitte. Americans wanted to know whether she's a woman. What has America to do with Macron's wife? I don't understand. And she was trolled on internet over this issue. We had an American talk host talking about it as if it's a item of it's a issue of it was breaking news or something of that sort. It is for Macron to live with his wife, not for the rest of definitely not for the United States of America. So the cyber harassment, I think, by itself deserves a webinar. There's a lot of cyber harassment going on at all levels. I completely agree. And we tend to feel that mental abuse is a vague term. It cannot be quantified. People just talk about mental abuse to ratchet up the damages, to ratchet up the compensation that they want. But Dr. Kurup will bear me out that mental abuse is not some vague term. It is a part of a person's well-being. You are harming a person's well-being.
So it's incidentally part of the other seminar that I conduct on GHK. It talks about the biological symptoms of psychological conflict. So there is a direct correlation between which organ, what disease manifests, like Aileen says. It will manifest somewhere biologically. So you can see it. So we work backwards, that if somebody comes with a certain complaint of a certain organ, we ask them whether you had this kind of a conflict in the mind. So that way also it's easier to connect back. And that's a very interesting subject for another day, of course.
So, sir, thank you so much. On behalf of Program for Legal Education and Awareness team and the attendees, we extend our hearty gratitude to Eileen ma'am, Ajoy sir, Sowmya ma'am, and Divya for sharing your valuable expertise and experiences. It was such an eye-opening webinar that we had today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thanks again.